Improving how good you are at a game is often talked about with regards to reaction time, strategies, and often just raw skill. Now all these are fair parts of improving how you play, but there is one element that's just pure practice, until you don't even think about it anymore. Anyway, I recently bought Celeste, a game that's been stretched to its limits by speedrunners. I mean, just look at this, and this, it's absolutely inhuman. There's no other word to describe it. But anyway, I bought Celeste, and I found it immensely challenging, timing dashes and jumps right, you know, that sort of thing. First, I thought I was just bad at the game, which, to be fair, I am, but I realised it was also the controls, at least in part. With each jump and dash I did, I had to intentionally and specifically move to each key to press it. Which, for those who haven't played Celeste, is Z for dash, or Z if you're American, X for jump, C for climb, and then arrows for movement. Having to think about each individual key press was slowing me down massively, especially since my experience from other games kept kicking in where I'd press space to jump, even though it did absolutely nothing. I'm sure I could have waited it out, ingrained the controls in my head, and finally gotten good at the game. But I'm really lazy, so I looked online for a better key set instead. The first piece of advice I found was going with the standard WASD key set, plus Q for dashing, space for jumping, and R for climbing. So I copied it, as one would do. Long story short, absolute disaster. Turns out using one hand to cover 7 different inputs when it's supposed to be 2 is really quite a bad idea, especially if you're bad at the game to begin with. But eventually I stumbled upon a pretty great one. WASD plus space plus J and K for dash and climb. Angling on my keyboard slightly also meant that I could play using my right hand more, which was useless because Celeste doesn't have mouse control. That also threw me off. As someone who enjoys playing both first-person shooters and grand strategy games, the mouse is almost always an integral part of looking around and orienting your character. Not with Celeste. But here's the interesting thing about the key set I use. I've noticed that whenever I try to dash, I, without thinking, hold down K as well as J, which in a lot of circumstances does literally nothing. I think it's due to my original keyboard mashing when I first started using that key set, which has now been absorbed into my general muscle memory. Things like these are just fascinating to me. Echoes of panic mashing remaining even after I've become familiar with the game. I'm still mostly trash though. I died 2,409 times in 9 hours. It's not even the end of the game. I got to chapter 7 of 9. It's not particularly great, so shut up. Yeah, this is me looking back over and editing. I'm now up to 9,000 deaths and 25 hours in game, with at least another 3 to go, which is just so amazing. Anyway, I feel like this is such a glossed over part of improving with practice. Not only do you gain a better understanding of how the game works as you play, but your brain also begins building shortcuts in your head so that you don't have to intentionally press every key every time. This is clear when looking at speedrunners, who not only have incredible skill but perfected muscle memory, training so much that each input is just automatic in their heads. Once again, Celeste is a good example of this, with things that were considered only possible in task runs just a few months ago being achieved without any assistance at all. It's incredible. However, not every game requires such precise and accurate key presses. Even difficult and fast-paced shooters like Doom and Doom Eternal give you a little leeway with your reaction time, at least on the lower and intermediate difficulties. So for these games, having the controls embedded in your brain isn't vital to improving, although they are still quite important. This issue of memorizing controls is far more prevalent on a keyboard than a controller, which is one of the reasons why Celeste is probably better with a controller. They're specifically designed so that all the buttons can be reached with ease as your fingers rest on them. It's not really the case with keyboards, which just have your hands rest in general areas. Hand if the game requires a mouse as well. Also, you're much more likely to press the wrong button on a keyboard if you just miss it, than on a controller. Personally, I prefer keyboards. I just find the joysticks and controllers to be too clunky when compared to the relative precision of a mouse. But that didn't really help me with Celeste, at all. Look, all I'm saying is that getting better at a game is not just understanding it better, or knowing the meta, hey that rhymed. A decent chunk of your improvement will just be getting more familiar with the controls, and getting your hands to automatically press buttons, without the need for specific and intentional effort to do so. Just look at how many people type on a keyboard normally, with them being able to type very quickly simply because they, through regular typing, have memorized which keys to type. So, if you think you're just trash at a new game you've just bought, because you can't react fast enough or can't press the right controls, just give it some time. Your brain will build shortcuts for you that'll help you in the future, so you don't even need to think about your next key press. Also, go play Celeste, it's pretty good.